Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito recently made a move that many on the right said could upend Pennsylvania's Electoral College vote, effectively throwing out 20 electoral votes from Biden, knocking him down to 286 electoral votes. It doesn't mean that Biden will lose or Trump will win, but it is a major component of Trump's Electoral College victory if he can bring it about. But the left had a counter argument. You see, Samuel Alito said that that they were docketing this challenge to mail-in voting in Pennsylvania, but he wanted the state of Pennsylvania's lawyers to respond by December 9th. For those that don't know, December 8th is the safe harbor deadline, meaning if disputes are not resolved, then it's too late. Certification happens. It's actually a bit more complicated than that. And the argument from the left was that because he set December 9th, the case was moot. December 8th would come and go. Safe harbor is met. Certification's on the table. And boom, we're done. Joe Biden wins all 20 electoral votes. Now Alito has issued a new updated request. He wants the response on the morning of the 8th, knocking out any arguments about safe harbor blocking the Supreme Court from issuing a ruling. It may be, ladies and gentlemen, that Alito actually is taking this seriously, heard the arguments from the left as to why they were going to challenge his ruling or the Supreme Court's ruling and said, fine, move it up a day before the safe harbor deadline. The dispute will remain active and boom, no electors coming from Pennsylvania. I know it's kind of confusing. So let me actually read through this and break down what it means and show you the arguments. But the bigger picture in all of this is the conflict we're seeing arise out of this. For one, Senate Republicans are saying they don't think anything is going to change. Joe Biden's going to be the president. They don't think Trump's challenges and Republican challenges to electoral vote counts or constitutionality is going to make a difference. That doesn't mean that it's a guarantee that Trump will fail. But I do think most people are looking at this like, I don't really see anything happening. But then Alito comes out and changes the date, Sunday, at about noon, and people immediately say, wait a minute. Now he just knocked out the safe harbor argument from the left, meaning it's entirely possible there will be an active dispute in Pennsylvania, and the electors will be in dispute as well and not get counted. What I see coming after this, no matter what, with the Supreme Court justice, with Amy Coney Barrett getting pushed through just last month, we're seeing a lot of conflict arise around people fighting in the streets. And I don't want to get too much into it because I do want to focus on the Supreme Court. But my friends, there are two realities on this. I'm desperately trying to break down and better understand the truth. But the left is saying straight up, Alito, his moves are meaningless. But if that was true, why is he doing it? The right is saying this is it. Justice will be had. And perhaps, but man, it is down to the wire. At the end of all this, what do we see? Antifa and right-wing individuals fighting in the streets. Some dude got shot the other day, a glancing wound, so they're okay, but like the tensions are escalating. I know this may seem kind of unrelated, but I think it's important based on the clash that's about to come. There was a brawl at a Florida, I think it was a high school football match between people waving Blue Lives Matter and the other team kneeling, and the teams are fighting in the field. The fights have come down to regular people in regular circumstances. It goes all the way to the bottom and all the way to the top. This is the most important thing I've been trying to stress to people. When you have small town high school football players fighting on the football field over their ideology, that's the lowest, like the lowest tier. It's the grassroots. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. It's the grassroots of individuals at odds with each other. And it reaches all the way up to the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, and the presidency. We have now covered every single aspect of our society in this culture war. And I think no matter who wins or loses, chaos is set to follow. But let me slow down and break down for you what this ruling means, why what Alito just did is serious. And before we do, make sure you head over to timcast.com/donate if you would like to support my work. There are many ways you can give. I got a P.O. box if you want to send me some stuff. But the best thing you can do is share this video, subscribe to this channel. But look, I'm not the mainstream media. I'm competing with the mainstream media, and they've got the resources to push back. And of course, their view on this is all left wing. If you think I'm doing a good job and it's rational, reasonable, please consider sharing this with your friends or family to just, maybe help them understand or support my work. But again, don't forget to like, subscribe, notification bell. Let's read first the simple news. Alito moves up response date on emergency application to 12/8. Now let's stop. and take a look at what that really means. There's a lot to break down. Going back in time, we have this story, again, from Legal Insurrection that says, Pennsylvania, don't assume Alito giving until 12/9 to respond to emergency application means he's letting it die on the vine. More likely, Alito's action means he and some other justices take the matter seriously and plan to rule on the merits once the opposition is submitted. Okay, full stop. What is the lawsuit? There is something called Act 77, which was passed in Pennsylvania back in last October in 2019. It created what's called no excuse mail-in voting. However, recently, Republicans filed a lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of this law because in Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania Constitution has specific criteria for what an absentee ballot is. It's supposed to be like if you're in the military and you can't come, but the Pennsylvania Constitution wants you to vote in person. Well, the Republicans in Pennsylvania passed this law. They added the no excuse mail-in voting. Apparently, it was a negotiation with Democrats. But they knew they needed to amend the Constitution. They began the constitutional amendment process, but stopped halfway through and then passed the law anyway, signaling to most people, hey, wait a minute. They knew they were violating the constitutional rights of Pennsylvania. And through this, they have just disenfranchised 2.5 million voters who thought their votes would be legal, and now they may not be. A lower court judge in Pennsylvania said, issued an emergency injunction saying you can't certify, and said, so after that, okay, let me slow down. After that, the state and the Democrats challenged it to the Supreme Court. And while that challenge was going through, the judge said, here's why I issued the injunction. And it is very likely that the plaintiffs, the Republicans who are saying it's unconstitutional, will win on the merits, meaning it is unconstitutional and there must be some relief, maybe even throwing out the entire election. That could block Joe Biden getting these 20 electoral votes. However, a ruling then came down from the Pennsylvania Supreme Court saying that they were dismissing this case on narrow grounds that it was too late to sue, and they dismissed it with prejudice, meaning the plaintiffs couldn't sue again. They've taken their challenge to the Supreme Court. The challenge has been docketed, meaning it is awaiting a response from the Supreme Court. Samuel Alito said, I want the state to respond to this charge by December 9th. Many on the left said this means it would not be going through, and let me show you. This is Steve Vladeck. I said he's the law expert. I'm not. I defer to him. But, my personal opinion is I don't think he's correct on this. Here's what he said. In response to Lawrence Hurley saying, Justice Alito has asked PA officials to file a response due December 9th. Vladeck, who is a Texas law professor, tweeted, Pennsylvania has already certified its electors. And the timing of Alito's order means SCOTUS wouldn't even be able to act on this nonsense before the federal safe harbor deadline, which is December 8th. In response, Liam Martin said, doesn't Alito's timeline create a problem for the state because it can't clear up the legal challenges before December 8th? Or am I misreading the safe harbor law? Vladeck said, you're misreading it. The electors have been certified, and now there's no way that certification will be disturbed before the safe harbor deadline. Perhaps. But I'm not entirely convinced that's how the law actually works. Far be it from me to criticize an actual law professor. Mind you, I'm just some dude on the internet. But many other people and people who work in the legal professions of sorts, not professors, but lawyers and such, have made an argument that's not the case. Take a look at this. I highlighted this in the last segment talking about Alito's ruling. From Congress.gov, they say, the December 8th safe harbor deadline. U.S. Code 3, U.S.C. 5 provides that if election results are contested in any state, and if the state prior to Election Day has enacted procedures to settle controversies or contests over electors and electoral votes, and if these procedures have been applied and the results have been determined 6 days before the electors' meetings, then these results are considered to be conclusive and will apply in the counting of the electoral votes. This date, known as the safe harbor deadline, falls on December 8th in 2020. The governor of any state where there was a contest and in which the contest was decided according to established state procedures is required to send a certificate describing the form and manner by which the determination was made to the archivists as soon as practicable. Okay, stop. What does this mean? It means there needs to be something in place to resolve a dispute before the election happens. Pennsylvania has that. If somebody contests the election, there is a legal process by which we can resolve this. Okay. Did Pennsylvania apply these procedures before the electoral votes were counted? The answer is yes, they did. This is all good news for Democrats, but wait, hear me out. One of the arguments from the right. The left is saying there was a contest. The procedure was the courts. The Supreme Court shot it down. Therefore, they have applied the proper procedures, and this is now legitimate, certified. We're done. Nothing can change that, and mostly because Alito set the deadline to be a day afterwards. Well, there is an argument from the right that says if the state prior to Election Day has enacted procedures to settle controversies or contests over electors and electoral votes, and if they've been applied, the results have been determined, blah, blah, blah. Here's the problem. According to several different pundits, there is no process by which Pennsylvania can resolve a Supreme Court challenge, meaning so long as this is docketed, the case is sitting before the Supreme Court. That means the contest is active. And it means that Pennsylvania has not, prior to Election Day, created a way by which they could resolve this. And they could. Pennsylvania could have passed a law saying, if at any point a contested election finds its way to a federal court, then we shall do X or Y, then apply those procedures, and then they can move forward. That seems to be reasonable. But because this moved to SCOTUS, which many people didn't think it would because it's a state matter now reaching the federal courts, there's no procedure by which they can resolve this, meaning they will not meet the safe harbor deadline and the electors are in dispute. Of course, that may not be correct. It's just one of the arguments being brought forward. This is where the breaking news comes in. Alito moves up response date on emergency application to 12/8, meaning the argument from the left when they said that it's pretty clever of Alito and a clear sign that says no chance, 9th. Too bad. The safe harbor deadline is the 8th. Therefore, Alito said we're letting it die on the vine. Well, he just changed that. Legal Insurrection says a lot of people read a lot into Justice Samuel Alito setting December 9th as the date for the Pennsylvania and its officials to respond to the emergency application for injunctive relief filed by people challenging the Pennsylvania certification. The argument was that Alito was going to let the application die on the vine, so to speak, by putting the response date after the federal safe harbor date. I didn't read any such intention to it. If anything, I conjectured perhaps it was a sign that at least some of the justices were taking it seriously because a quick denial would be easy. Taking it seriously doesn't mean they would grant relief, but there may be opinions issued by various justices, and that would require a few days. Basically, this has been docketed by the Supreme Court. But I've spoken to those involved in the case to get their comments and opinions. And the general idea is the Supreme Court did not just knock it out. They're considering it. They're taking it very seriously. No joke. That means Pennsylvania is still in play to some degree. But what's the probability? Don't look at me. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. But Alito is at least taking it seriously. Legal Insurrection goes on to say, I don't think the safe harbor date would preclude the Supreme Court from acting. But it may have been something weighing on the minds of some justices because an updated entry on the Supreme Court docket just moved the deadline to 9 a.m. Tuesday, December 8th. Response to application 20A-98 requested by Justice Alito due Tuesday, December 8th by 9 a.m. Docketed entry updated 12/6/20. So what is this about? More mind reading. It takes the safe harbor issue off the table if that were impediment to SCOTUS issuing a substantive ruling, which means we may get a Supreme Court ruling on the 8th. Don't know for sure. But what Legal Insurrection is arguing is that maybe some of the justices who want to consider this are saying the safe harbor thing is going to be an issue and we will get challenges. Okay, move it up a day. Then we have the 8th to take it, issue some opinions or act upon it. And then at the very least, they may not issue it on the 8th, but if the state of Pennsylvania files their response on the 8th and the Supreme Court says we are now officially in dispute and we will be reading through this and we will eventually give you our opinion on the matter, it would mean that that safe harbor wasn't met. There's an active challenge that is not being remedied, and Pennsylvania will not make the deadline. This sounds to me like a massive victory for Donald Trump. And there's a lot to go through here, okay? Like I mentioned, the weird chaos and stuff, but maybe I'll do that for another segment. I just want to point out, while all this may be good news, we have this from the Hill. Senate GOP brushes off long shot attempt to fight Biden win. Mo Brooks, Republican of Alabama, a member of the Conservative Freedom Caucus, grabbed headlines when he announced that he would challenge the votes when Congress officially certifies President-elect Joe Biden's victory on January 6th. But GOP senators are dismissing the effort, even as President Trump publicly praises Brooks. GOP Senator John Cornyn of Texas said the January meeting of Congress is really a formality after the Electoral College votes in mid-December, a date many Republicans have pointed to as when they will formally acknowledge Biden's victory. That's December 14th. Safe harbor is 6 days before the 14th. If Pennsylvania doesn't meet the safe harbor deadline, they have an active dispute. Well, there you go. The left's argument was predicated upon Alito saying the 9th. Now that he said the 8th, that's it. The dispute can be active so long as the Supreme Court says, yes, we agree to hear this. And it sounds like they do. Or maybe they just dismiss it right off the bat. I'm not entirely convinced they would, because they could have outright when they got the suit in the first place. But the lower court judge in Pennsylvania, many of you probably know this, already said that the plaintiffs will likely win on the merits. The Republicans will likely be able to justifiably say mail-in voting was unconstitutional. I hope you're ready for the insanity that erupts following a ruling like that if it were to happen. But the left is going to tell you it's not going to happen. I'm reading for you this story from The Hill because I'm trying to be reasonable. I can't predict the future. Republicans are even saying, quote, nobody likes to lose, but we have to respect the judgment of the American people, the voters. So I don't support, I don't endorse, I don't really like just making a show just to make a show, Cornyn said. Asked if he saw the 11th hour attempt to overturn the results of the election going anywhere, Mike Braun of Indiana, who has linked himself closely to Trump, replied, I do not. I think that December 14th is a critical date, Braun said, adding that by January 6th, if there's not enough other stuff in place, I doubt that would be a maneuver that would seem to work. But maybe we're going to see some action. A signature audit has been announced for Georgia. That could theoretically put the state in dispute. And if they have not rectified that dispute because there's a signature audit happening, they might miss the deadline as well. My friends, we are 2 days away. So what are these other suits, other states? Look, man, I've said it over and over again. I don't think Trump is going to be able to pull this off. He's on his track. Even though Republicans are saying this, you don't got to get mad at me because I just don't see it. It's just how I feel. Trump could maybe do it, but we're talking about lightning striking 3 times in a row. And that, my friends, is just, I don't know. I just don't see it happening. But I can point to things and at least say the door is open. I highlighted this the other day as well from the Washington Post. Which candidate Republican lawmakers say won the election? 27 Republicans have said Biden won. And you see how they put actual winner underneath? We then see that 2 Republican lawmakers have said Trump won, and 220 are not giving an answer. Trump is fighting right now for legitimacy. The other day, he had a rally that was referred to by many as a victory rally. He said if he lost, he would graciously accept the results, but he did not lose. They cheated. It was rigged and all that stuff. Well, there are many Republicans who seem to be waiting, saying nothing. And I wonder what's that's all about. To me, that says, first of all, Republicans don't like Trump for the most part. These 2 who said he won clearly do like him. But many Republicans are scared that if they defy Trump, they'll get punished in the electorate. The Republicans love Trump. Like the Republican voters, the politicians seem to be ambivalent. And that's, it's mostly about them just wanting the keys to the castle. So what's happening now is these 220 Republicans, in my opinion, are waiting to figure out if it's safe. Is it safe to say Trump won? Is it safe to say he lost? They don't know. So long as Trump wins one victory, maybe come the 6th, 7th, or 8th, other states may follow. Republicans may start coming out and saying, no, we've seen the evidence. And it really comes down to the state legislatures. I don't know what the Supreme Court's going to say, but I'll tell you this. If the Supreme Court issues a bold and broad opinion saying that mail-in voting at the last minute, these changes are unconstitutional outright, it could affect the entire election. Just a ruling theoretically could affect many other states. I'm not entirely convinced, and it seems like it would be a magical moment if that were to actually happen. Now, Alito's conservative. He's complained about free speech issues and, American values and stuff like that before. So many people think he's on Team Trump. You've got Brett Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett, and Roberts, who all helped George W. Bush in Bush v. Gore. Amy Coney Barrett oversees the circuit with Wisconsin, Kavanaugh with Michigan, and Alito with Pennsylvania, and Clarence Thomas with Georgia. These are the justices Trump would need to be in these states to accept these emergency applications. It was all good news for Trump, and now it seems to be paying off. When it was announced that they did these new assignments, and you had these justices overseeing these circuits, everybody pointed out that's exactly what Trump would need. He may not get a 6-3 Supreme Court because Roberts, many people believe, is siding with the left on basically everything. But when an emergency application comes in Pennsylvania, it's Alito, and he'll probably be favorable to it. All this leads us to, I guess, what I would just call like the dark times. You know, Joe Biden called it a very dark winter before us, and he was referring to COVID. I certainly think with what we're seeing with this deputy in Staten Island who got run over, I call them oath breakers, by the bar owner. I don't believe it was intentional, but it's shocking. People aren't standing up for this. They're not laying down for this. They're standing up to this. But let me show you something really, really crazy. Florida high school football game descends into a brawl after one side ran onto the field with a Blue Lives Matter flag, and the other took a knee during the national anthem. Waukesha High School Waukesha High School took on Mitchell High on November 27th in the state playoffs. The game was won by Mitchell High 24-18. Before kickoff, Mitchell players ran onto the field with a Blue Lives Matter flag. Waukesha players knelt during the national anthem in response. There's allegations of slurs. 10 players were suspended. Waukesha was fined $500. This seems to be a stupid story, right? I saw it and I thought it was kind of like, I don't want to say funny, haha, but funny like, whoa, that's crazy. I just spent the first 20 minutes telling you that the highest court in the land is considering a ruling on these elections. And while that is happening, at the lowest level of politics, high school football matches, like maybe not the lowest, but one of the lowest, maybe the lowest you could argue is like, you know, a dude sitting in a park or something, like no policy impact whatsoever. But the lowest level of just regular people living their regular lives, they're fighting over cultural politics. We just had a major brawl in Washington and in California. In Washington, people were walking around with guns. They got ARs, they got handguns. Somebody took a glancing shot to the abdomen. They're very, very, very fortunate. Some guy was waving his gun around as the brawls were breaking out. And I'll tell you this, Antifa got stomped out. These are just regular people who are coming out and protesting. And Antifa are these weirdo, far left, fringe, whatever you want to call them. Antifa got just brutally beaten. We've seen the factional violence. Now so I'll put it this way. People talk about the factional violence and say, yeah, but the political tribes are going to fight each other. What do you call it when two high school football teams are fighting each other? Those aren't political factions. That's where it comes down to the smallest individual, to the regular people. I've been talking about some kind of civil conflict for quite some time. And I've had a lot of people say to me, it'll never happen because the government won't let it. And I said, what makes you think that these fights won't make it in the government? Of course they will. We've seen the videos from Project Veritas. Remember when Veritas put out those videos showing government bureaucrats, employees talking about how they were resisting Trump and they were activists against Trump, but they're in the government? You're not supposed to be able to do that. There's like laws blocking federal government employees from playing partisan politics. But they're there. They exist. They are there. They exist and they're fighting. If I see two people fight in the street, a Proud Boy and Antifa, I can say, hey, man, tensions are rising. And I did. I talked about it quite a bit in the past several years. Then it makes its way up the political chain. You end up with the president fighting with his own staff, firing them, appointing new people because the ideologies are split. Trump appointed some loyalists to the Pentagon, and now they're blocking Biden from receiving certain intelligence information. That fight is there. It's not physical. But beyond the factions, it's the regular folk now. It's the regular people that are starting to fight. So here's where we end up, in my opinion. We have Alito on the cusp of, he opened the door. The Supreme Court is going to issue one way or another. If this is dismissed outright and we move on, it'll be a normal day in the park for most of us. And we'll find out in the next couple of days. It's going to still be tense. It's going to be a lot of fighting. But if the Supreme Court says no to this, then we're going to be exactly where we are. Trump insisting he won, Trump supporters yelling, stop the steal, more lawsuits and challenges that may ultimately end up, and I believe it will, with Joe Biden being inaugurated on the 20th and Trump just saying, I object. But what happens if the Supreme Court says we're going to be taking this case, putting Pennsylvania in dispute after the safe harbor deadline? That would mean that it's too late. They can't certify. They can't just say it is certified. It's contested. It's legit contested. They may say it's certified, but the electors, as the law stated, are contested with no remedy, nothing to apply to remedy this. 20 votes out. They've got, 2 days to figure something out. I don't know where and when this finally stops, because a lot of people thought it was election day, and it's not. But tomorrow, I think we might see something get truly crazy, because that's when the Republicans have to pull out all the stops. Theoretically, you could argue the 14th, but getting to the safe harbor deadline, past it. So maybe on the 8th, we'll see something, all these challenges. If the 8th comes and goes and the challenges in these states are not resolved, there may be legal objections to these votes that don't make it through. Now, I'll stress, when it comes to objecting electoral votes, that means that on January 6th, the House and the Senate have to agree to throw out votes. It is very unlikely they will. But what if the states don't send electors or send 2 sets? Then there's no way to get resolution. If Pennsylvania decides we can't resolve the dispute, so we're sending our electors, and both Republican and Democrat go, they neutralize each other. No votes for Joe Biden. That's when I think fists start flying. I don't know, man. I am truly worried about the severity by which the escalation is happening. It's a fight for legitimacy. The media has been saying endlessly president-elect. Chris Wallace corrected a guest on the show saying, it's president-elect Joe Biden. If I was on there, I'd be like, excuse me, what is president-elect? Define it for me. When the incoming president is officially certified. So you mean by January 6th, once the votes are counted, then we have a president-elect? Because that's the votes those are the votes that matter. The media is desperate to convince you. Twitter is. I've got Facebook putting fake fact checks on my videos. The craziest thing, they put a fact check on one of my videos saying it was false information, even though I didn't assert anything. I read the story. I read the fact check. I gave my opinion, and they said it was fake news. That's how serious this is. Milquetoast's fence sitter telling you right now, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know who's right. Here's what the story says, and here's what's true. And they called it fake news. That's how desperate they are to make sure you fall in line with Joe Biden as president-elect. He's not. I believe he will be. I believe he will be inaugurated. I could be wrong. That's the best I can put it. Guess what? I'm a milquetoast fence sitter. How about that? The reality is, I don't have all the evidence. I haven't seen everything. I've seen a lot of evidence. I can tell you there's a dispute. Alito has issued this ruling. It flies in the face of the left's argument. So we'll see how it plays out. What they expect, the fact checkers, is of me and many other people to choose a tribe and just say yes. I'm not going to lie and claim that a bunch of craziness is going to happen. People are going to get arrested. Trump's going to win. I'm not going to lie and claim that Biden is president-elect. It's just not true. That's the best I can do. But even the powers that be will call that fake news. That's how you know things are getting spicy. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up tomorrow at 10 a.m. I might have some other segments. I don't know if I feel like it, but I'll leave it there. Thanks for hanging out. Check out the podcast on all podcast platforms, Tim Pool Daily Show and Timcast IRL. And I will see you all tomorrow at 10 a.m.